So in this video, we're going to talk about the truth about defensive people. We're going to talk about defensiveness, people who are defensive, right? So let's start with what is defensiveness. So defensiveness is like a coping mechanism, and it's often used when the person is being criticized, right? So you would mostly see this in like couples when they're arguing, or a work situation, or family or friend conflict or whatever. But mostly you see this during when couples have a conflict and eventually both of them become defensive, and it's like goes into an argument and a fight, right? So the reason why I'm talking about this is because defensiveness prevents solving conflict, and it blocks empathy, and it blocks intimacy in romantic relationship, right? So that is the reason why I choose this topic. And defensiveness stems from emotional issues, mental problems, personality issues, feelings of abandonment, you feel inferior, low self-esteem. When somebody is defensive with me, most of the time is low self-esteem, or maybe they were invalidated as a child, or they see their parents being defensive during conflict and they pick it up, right? So when somebody tries to defend themselves, they're mostly trying to stop the feeling of they're trying to prevent themselves from feeling guilty, from feeling shame, from feeling hurt, angry, right? When they perceive somebody is trying to criticize them, right? And this person will just try to defend themselves to stop feeling anger, hurt, angry, shame, and so on. They refuse to see the other person's point of view because they could fear rejection, they could fear abandonment, they could fear like humiliation especially, and they could fear of feeling like a failure or they got something wrong. That is why they become defensive, right? So there are many different ways to be defensive. So one of the first ways is like of somebody being defensive is they just stop they stop listening to you, right? They give silent treatment, which is passive aggressive. We talk about silent treatment before in other videos. That is a way of being defensive. It's passive aggressive, right? They stop listening to you, they stop talking to you. That's one way of being defensive. Another way, they gaslight you, right? You know what's gaslighting? When somebody make you question your memory, they make you question your sanity, they deny things that they did, they deny things that they actually said. They make you think that you are not thinking clearly, and that you can't remember correctly what happened or what was said, right? So gaslighting, they could call you crazy, or you're too sensitive, or you're over emotional and you're overreacting about things, right? They could tell you like you have a memory problem, or they just suggest like something is really wrong with you, right? So that's gaslighting, and that is a form of being defensive, right? Another form of being defensive is just like they act as if you have no business telling them about this issue. They act as if you have no business calling them out on what they did to you, what they said wrong, or whatever they did. Another way people show defensiveness is that they just make up an excuse for what you are criticizing them about. They always have an excuse for what you criticize them about. They always, but this, but that. This, I did this because, I said that because, and if you was, many always have an excuse, could never accept and say, yeah, I was wrong. They always have an excuse for what they did, for what they said, for what happened, right? And another way, they blame it on you. They blame you for what you are criticizing them for. It's your fault. That is another way of being defensive, right? They turn it on you, right? Another way of being defensive is that they accuse you of doing the same thing. Yeah, but you did that last week, and you did the same thing last month and you did the same thing last year and you did the same thing. Like, they accuse you of doing the same thing. They try to create a way or scenario. They could even lie or plain lie about you doing the same thing. That's a form of being defensive. There are many signs of defensiveness. They will try to justify their actions, right? They would give a whole long explanation. Sometimes it have no sense of why they did what they did. They always want to justify or make what they did seem not as bad or whatever, right? Another way people be defensive is when they bring up past situations of what you did wrong in the past, just to avoid talking about what you want to talk about now. They bring up past things that you did wrong. I mean, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, remember you did this, and last month, remember you did this, and last week you did this. And it has nothing to do with the topic, right? That's another way people are defensive. That's another sign. And another sign, people just outright lie. That's being defensive. And another way is they just avoid the conversation, like silent treatment, but they don't allow you to have a discussion at all, right? There's no form of discussion. There's no way to discuss the matter. They just avoid the topic. They avoid you. That is being defensive, right? So those are the many signs of defensiveness, right? So the real truth behind their defensiveness, right? The reason why I bring up this topic is because I was talking to a friend and they were defensive, and for some reason they look like the enemy. They look like they want to fight me. I'm their opponent or something like that. Like we're not a team. So this is why I bring up this topic, right? But the truth behind their defensiveness could be they feel criticized, and when you feel criticized, you could feel embarrassed, right? So they could feel embarrassed. The real truth, why they're defensive? They feel shame about what they have done, and they feel guilty about what they have done. Most of the time, they know they did something wrong, and they feel shame and they feel guilty, and they're embarrassed about their actions, what they did, what happened. That is the truth behind why they're defensive. Or they want to protect their reputation. They don't want to be seen as a bad person. They want to protect their character. They don't want to be looked at in a bad light. They don't want to be seen as this cruel person or harsh or cold-hearted. So they'd be defensive because they want to protect their reputation, right? Another truth behind defensiveness is that when they were young, they were invalidated as a child, and they just continue on being defensive while growing up. Just automatically, they're defensive, right? Another reason why people are defensive, the truth behind it, they want power and control over the situation, right? They just want their thing. They just want things their way. They could have been spoiled as a child, right? And they just continue on wanting things their way without listening or trying to hear the other person's story or the other person's point of view. They just want control over the situation and power over everything, right? Another truth, as I mentioned, they know they're wrong, and they just don't want to face the consequences of being wrong. They don't want to face the consequences. They know you might put some boundaries. They know you might, cut them off. They know they might have to apologize. They know they might have to change. They don't want to face the consequences, so they're defensive. And they know they're wrong. That's the truth behind defensiveness. They don't want to face the consequences, right? Another truth behind defensiveness is that they feel attacked. Like you attack their character, and now they secretly feel hurt and they feel inadequate about themselves. And that is why they're defensive. There is more. And this is a big one where I see very often. One of the truths behind people being defensive, they don't want to apologize. They don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to deal with your emotions. They don't want to deal with their own negative emotions or their feelings. They basically just refuse to take accountability for their actions. They refuse to own up to their mistakes just because they don't want to apologize. They don't want to deal with your emotions, and they don't want to deal with their negative emotions because they probably feel guilty. They probably feel shame. They're probably angry and feel like inadequate and feel like, they know they're wrong. They just don't want to apologize. That is why they're defensive. Yeah, but you did this. Yeah, but you said that. Yeah, but I did this because you said that. They just don't want to apologize, right? They feel inadequate. And another reason why people are defensive is just, and they might not know, they lack communication skills. They lack knowledge and awareness of how to behave. And their behavior is just, they don't know how they're behaving. They don't know that they're behaving in a wrong way, in an inappropriate way. They don't know. They lack the skills to know how to behave. They lack the skills to know when to apologize. They lack the skills to know how to resolve conflict without being defensive and angry. And that is why they're defensive. They don't know. They lack knowledge. They lack awareness of themselves and other people. Right? Another truth behind defensiveness is that they feel hopeless about the situation because it always happened to them. This situation always comes up with other people. They always have a situation where they are defensive and they can't resolve conflict. So they just feel hopeless and they just want it just like out of their way. Right? Another truth behind defensiveness, they want to take the attention off of themselves because they feel uncomfortable, so they just blame it on you. This is just uncomfortable. They don't want to deal with it. They don't deal with conflict often. They don't deal with emotions often. They don't resolve issues often. They don't talk things out. They mostly sweep things under the rug. They mostly suppress their emotions. They don't resolve issues in their life. So just take the attention off themselves and put it on you and blame you, and it's your fault. That's why they are defensive. Right? And they could have learned this behavior from their parents, or they were with some romantic lover and they were acting defensive towards them, and then they start to act defensive. Right? And another reason why people are defensive is just they just want to keep the truth hidden. They are telling lies. They don't want the truth to come out. Whatever they have done, they have said, just they don't want the truth to come out. Right? That is why they are defensive. That is the truth behind defensiveness. Many truths behind defensiveness. Right? And what a defensive person is thinking when you call them out, or when you try to give them feedback or criticize them, even if it's constructive, they just have a problem with what you're saying. They think that you're out of line and that you're out of place for holding them accountable and addressing them, right? They think that it's unacceptable for you to call them out on their wrongdoings. Like, how dare you check me on what I'm doing or what I'm saying or whatever. How dare you check me? How dare you call me out? This would not be allowed. That is what they're thinking. Right? And it blocks you from seeing the other person's perspective, being defensive. It blocks you from developing listening skills. It blocks you from comprehension and understanding situations. And it blocks you from resolving conflict. And then you keep having the same problems over and over again. It blocks you from empathy with your partner and sympathy. It blocks you from bonding and becoming close because you're rigid and you are just unwilling to hear the other person's perspective. Right? And you might be listening to this, somebody might have been defensive with you, or they are usually defensive, and you want to know like how to communicate with them, right? And I'll just give about a couple tips on how to successfully communicate with them. It might work, it might not work, right? So one of the first things you should do when you communicate with somebody defensive is that you have to make sure that you are calm and that you are in a relaxed state before you address them, before you call them out on whatever they did to you or said or whatever happened, right? Be sure that you are not angry yourself, and that you are not upset, and that you have no intentions to go and argue, to go and fight with them, to go put them straight. Make sure that you not go into them thinking you're going to put them in their place, and just have no intentions of making them agree with you or arguing with them. Make sure that you are calm and you are relaxed, because you can also get defensive automatically. When somebody get defensive, you could get defensive and it escalates into a fight, right? So just make sure you're calm and you're in a relaxed state before you approach them, right? The next thing is, don't try to control them. Don't try to be in control of the conversation, and don't try to make them conform and make them or persuade them into agreeing with you or seeing your side of the story. This would just create an argument, or sometimes this make them shut down, right? It depends on the person. It creates an argument, or they shut down, they avoid you, don't want to talk about it, right? And next tip is, just don't show that you're shocked. Don't show that, oh my God, how can you say this? How can you do this? Don't show that, oh my God, I can't believe you said this. I can't believe you did that. Just don't show that you're shocked. Just stay calm during the conversation, because showing that you're shocked would make things escalate, and that will make them be even more defensive when you show that you're shocked, and that is going to create argument and fight and conflict. The next thing is, stay logical and just be objective, right? Keep your composure, control your emotions, be clear, be precise in what you're saying, and just be collective in your communication with them, right? So that's just 4 tips to help you communicate with a defensive person. It might work, it might not work, it might work halfway, and then you might get in a conflict, we don't know. But you could try those 4 tips, right? If you want to communicate with somebody who's mostly defensive, right? So for the defensive persons that might be watching this, there are negative impacts of being defensive, right? And one of the first and one of the most, I think it's important to know that when you're defensive, you end up making the other person feel bad, right? You look like you're against them, and this is why I made this video. You look like you're against them. You look like you're unwilling to walk through things as a team. You're not showing as if like you care about the relationship, or you care about the friendship, or whatever your situation you're in. It could be work, it could be family, it could be friend, but I'm thinking romantic relationship here, right? You just look, when you're defensive, you look like your opponent, and you look like you're the enemy. You look like you're turning into an enemy, right? You end up making the other person feel bad, and I know it's not your intention to make them feel bad. And this, when they feel bad, it makes the whole situation even worse, right? The second negative impact of being defensive is that you make the situation worse, right? When somebody come to you to discuss a situation, to make plans, people get defensive, or to make plans, or to talk about a scenario that happened, or you might just come to have a conversation about your perspective, your idea on something, to make plans, or to resolve something, or to ask, hey, what you meant when you said that, or why did you do that? And they're defensive, right? You just make the situation worse, because things start to come intense and aggressive, right? And hostile, more than it need to be. And eventually the conversation just escalates into like an argument and a fight. So it's annoying, and it just makes the situation worse, Like, there's unnecessary conflict, unnecessary fight, unnecessary argument. Sometimes it's just to make plans or just to talk about a situation that happened or a scenario, and people get defensive. They're just defensive for no reason. Anyways, the third negative impact of being defensive is that when you're defensive, problems could never get solved because you're stubborn and you're not actively listening, and you're just unwilling to understand the other person's side of the story, unwilling to understand their perspective, unwilling to put yourself in their shoes. And when you do that, like, you're stubborn, like you put a guard up, or when you're defensive like that, problems could never be solved, right? You just, your inability to walk through big emotions or to reason out things, it causes the same problems to keep coming over, and nothing could ever be resolved because you're unwilling to reason out things or to have a productive conversation, right? So nothing ever gets solved. Problems are always there. Sweep under the rug, don't talk about it, avoid it, act like it didn't happen, and the same problems will keep coming up over and over and over again, and that's annoying, and that cause conflict, that cause resentment, that cause people to grow apart, and all of these things that cause communication problem, many things, right, when problems are not resolved. Another negative impact of being defensive is that people may avoid you, right? People may just like stop communicating with you because they know that it's difficult to have a productive conversation with you, and they know that the problem might not get resolved, and that you're rigid, and that you're stubborn, and that you wouldn't listen and wouldn't try to understand. So people could just avoid you. They believe that you don't have the capacity to walk through situations where there's emotions involved. If they know emotions going to be involved, vulnerability might have to be involved, you might have to apologize or reason out things, they'll just avoid you. And this could make you feel like an outcast if this keep happening to you a lot, right? So the next negative impact of being defensive is that people think like positive change with you, or you progressing in a relationship with them is impossible. It's impossible to move forward with you or to grow with you in a relationship, because it's difficult for you to take accountability for your actions. You don't own up to your mistakes. You refuse to apologize. You refuse to see their perspective. You refuse to resolve conflict. Like, people just think like, change with her? Never. Change with him? Never. Develop and grow in a relationship? Never. Never with him. Right? People think that and avoid you, as I mentioned before. The next negative impact is that you continue on in your life with lack of progress in communication, like lack of communication skills, right? So you may never get to learn how to communicate effectively, how to listen actively, or how to understand or comprehend the other person's perspective, how to put yourself in other people's shoes, how to be sympathetic or empathetic. You don't know how to apologize correctly and how to resolve conflict in a healthy manner, and you just go on in your life without communication skills, and that could really affect your relationships, family, friends, romantic partner, even work. So those are the negative impacts of being defensive, right? And you may ask, okay, how not to be defensive? Well, the first thing you should do is to know that you could shut down. Some people shut down when they're being defensive, or they argue, or they lash out when somebody criticizes them, or they gaslight people. Just know, I don't know what you do. You could shut down, you could be angry, you could get aggressive, you could criticize them, you could blame them for what happened. Many things, right? When they give you negative feedback or somebody call you out on your bad behavior, you tend to shut down or lash out or something like that. You have to try to stay calm and notice that you automatically jump to being defensive. You probably had this from when you were young. And just notice your bodily sensation. When it start to sweat, or your heart start to beat faster, or your breathing start to get deeper and faster. Or you could just feel like tense in your limbs or your chest, or you feel a tension or whatever. This could help you to, like, noticing those bodily sensations could help you to slow down and just choose your response instead of reacting automatically in a defensive way, which is obviously not productive. And sometimes you say things and you do things you regret by being defensive, right? So when you get to know your body sensation, you just try to figure out, like, what emotion am I feeling here, or just reflect on the moment and try to manage yourself, right? You could even share with who you're talking to if you're close to them. If it's like your romantic partner, like, you could tell them how you're feeling. You could tell them, like, okay, I'm feeling angry about this, or I feel like kind of shocked, or you could feel irritated or shame or something, or embarrassed about this, and then they could kind of restore the conversation or try to make the conversation more safe for you so you don't feel attacked, right? So that's the first thing you should do, right? The next thing you should do is you should just assume that who you're dealing with, especially if it's a romantic partner, that they have good intentions, right? Give them the benefit of the doubt that they mean well, that they're looking out for you, that they want the best for you, that they have your best interests at heart, and they want to see things better with you or with them, right? They may believe that you have the ability to be better, so that's why they're bringing up this topic, and that's why they're bringing up this type of behavior, or what you said, or what you did, or what transpired, I don't know. Just assume that they have good intentions, right? The next tip is just don't take things personally. Don't take things personally. They may just be giving you some feedback so you can improve, right? Don't think that is to bring you down, or it's to make you feel bad, or it's to make you feel like you can't get nothing right, or it's to make you feel like a failure, or it's to bring down your character or your reputation. Like, just don't take things personally. It could just be a conversation that is letting you know that certain behaviors are harmful and it's not, and then that you need to improve, right? Don't think that they're trying to attack you, or they're trying to blame you, or they're trying to make you embarrassed, or they're trying to make you feel wronged, or just they might actually care about you and care about the relationship or friendship or whatever you have with them, right? And they want you to be better, and they want to have a better, like, relationship with you without the same problems coming up, right? Next thing is to look at things as a way to learn. Look at situations as a way to grow and to be better, right? So when somebody criticizes you or call you out on something, take this as a way, okay, I didn't see this about myself, I could be better, I could learn and grow from this, right? Make a choice to see difficult feedback as a way, a learning opportunity, especially when you don't agree, and, like, you have a different perspective. Take that opportunity to, like, learn more and grow and develop, right? We are not perfect. We are human. We all make mistakes, right? So you should just have, like, some self-compassion. Like, be more open-minded. Be in a receptive state so you can manage your reactions, your reactive tendencies to be defensive. Just take this time to learn and grow, to own up to your mistakes. When you own up to your mistakes, you learn, you grow, you be better. When you learn to apologize, you forgive yourself, you forgive the other person. You doing all of this, you get the opportunity to be closer to them, to create a stronger bond with them, to be more intimate, to get to know the person for who they really are, to move forward and grow in a relationship, You don't want to be the person in the relationship who is stagnant, not growing, not moving forward. Your partner outgrow you, leave you. You don't want to be that, right? So those are some stuff you could do if you are a defensive person. And that's all I have for this video. So we talked about defensiveness, signs that people are defensive, and you also went through the real truth about why people are defensive. They feel embarrassed, they feel shame, they feel guilty, they know they did wrong, they want control, they want power over the situation, they don't want to apologize. That's a big one. They don't want to deal with your emotions. They don't want to deal with their emotions because they could feel angry, they could feel like they failed or they did something wrong, right? They don't want to apologize. They want to take the attention off them and put it on you. They could learn this behavior from their parents or whatever, right? So for people who are defensive, you shouldn't be thinking like, how dare you check me on my behavior, or thinking that people are out of line or they're out of place for addressing a situation that hurt them. You might disrespect them. You might hurt them, disrespect them. You might say something awful. You did something hurtful. You look cruel. Don't be thinking, how dare you check me, how that they are out of place for addressing you, right? They have respect for themselves. You should be happy that somebody have respect for themselves to bring a situation to you, to resolve they want to resolve the conflict. That should say something to you, right? So if you're going to communicate, for people who are communicating with defensive people, make sure you're calm, you're relaxed, you don't want to fight, you don't come to put them in their place, you don't act shocked, just stay logical, be objective, and stay calm, and don't try to control them. And for people who are defensive, know that you're making people feel bad, know that you're making the situation worse, know that the problems are not resolved, they keep coming up over and over. Know that people will start to avoid you because they know that they cannot progress with you, and that it might be very difficult for you to change, right? And as a person who is defensive, you would continue to lack communication skills, you lack listening skills, you don't listen actively, you're rigid, stubborn, refuse to apologize. Like, all of those things are holding you back and you're not progressing as a human being. So, right? So, what you should do, recognize your bodily sensations and make the right choice, right? Don't take things personally, right? See it as a way to learn and grow and be better. And see you in the next video. If you like this video, subscribe, hit the like button.